Welcome everyone to Horrorific Chats. In this segment we talk to independent creators and contributors to the show where we discuss all things horror. Tonight we're delighted to talk with Christina Hoag, an early contributor to Horrific Tales. Whenever we first started, Christina is a journalist, author and motivational speaker. Christina, how are you?
Good, thanks. I just want to note it's about 25 degrees here. I'm in Los Angeles. Blue sky, no clouds, and sunny.
Oh, lovely. Well, the rain has just started getting a little bit warmer here. We're just finally leaving winter. We just had major storms there a couple of weeks ago, and I mean, the place was battered.
I saw that on the news. Yeah, I saw some video of a ferry getting like a tsunami, drowning this ferry somewhere in the North Sea or Baltic, somewhere in the Baltic.
Oh yeah,
Sea.
Because we're an island nation, it's, you know what I mean? That's the thing. Other countries have hurricanes, tornadoes, earthquakes, but we get storms from the sea, and we get absolutely battered. And if you're anywhere near the coast, you can be in trouble. Like trees here were just going sideways with the wind,
Wow.
And it lasted for about 6 or 7 days. It's the thing is,
really?
It's non-stop. When the weather hits, and in fact my local cinema is damaged at the moment and not opening up until the end of the month, so that kind of puts paid to me watching movies at the moment if it's not streaming. So what was it, there was actually unfortunately a couple of people lost their lives due to it, but thankfully it was like a rare occurrence. But yeah, when we get hit with storms, it's really bad.
It's really bad. Wow, yeah. I know, as you say, every place has its own little geographic, downfall. Here of course it's earthquakes. Good, we haven't had them, a major one in a very long time, but it could hit at any moment.
It's it's always something to worry about, especially if you don't know. Japan are quite good with that. They seem to have built their whole infrastructure around earthquakes. That I think they were the first to come up with the skyscrapers, weren't they? With the like breeze blocks at the top as a counterbalance.
Yeah, they're on rollers, so they sort of roll with the movement of the earth and things like that. Yeah, that's what you do, is just build with these earthquake codes, but they're still obviously tremendously damaging if a big one hits.
Yeah, over here we have like the sea walls. There's all sorts of defences in place, and plus the reason the materials of our houses go for red brick traditionally. It's because of the slate roofs, red brick, tough materials that can take a battering, because even though the storms are in the extreme, the weather is that type, because it's an island and the sea greatly influences our weather and what happens. That's why it's built. It's interesting to see different places and how they react to their environment, and how you get different shapes and styles of housing and architecture and culture as well, all built around it. It is a fascinating world we live in.
Oh, I agree. I've traveled a lot, and it's right. You just drink it in, all these different things as you go around. And I remember seeing in Vietnam, when I saw they have these really narrow houses that go right up, really odd shape, but I guess it's for the lack of space, or I don't really know why they build very narrow houses on several stories, but it was something to see.
It obviously worked at some point, and then it's continued on.
Yeah, so for some reason they built it.
Yeah, like in the UK, we're known for the rows of terraced housing, and that falls back from the Industrial Revolution, because likes of the factories, the houses were an extension of the factory, so the neighbourhoods grew up. And even at one point, like, everyone's talking about recycling and reusing materials if it's a new thing, but in the first factories, like the hot water, the byproducts from the factories actually used to heat the houses. Hence why they were in rows and close to like industrial complexes, because that was all recycled and reused. And then
interesting.
And then that bit gets lost. People forget about that bit, and then it becomes tradition, and then people forget, how did we get here?
Yeah, it all had a purpose in the beginning. All had a reason being.
But this is anyone who comes on this expecting it to be like organised or anything, we just talk with whatever happens and just go with it, because that's half the
just
fun.
Go where we go.
Go where we go, because that's it's all about having the chat, getting get to know people. Now, you got involved when this show first started just over a year and a half ago. You're actually one of our first contributors. My Mother's Knives, you contributed that. It's actually great. And now you're here, one of our first episodes of Horrorific Chats, contributed again and helping us get started. It's really great to have you back.
Oh, well, thank you. You did a terrific job with My Mother's Knives. I just loved your reading of it. It was really good. That's actually one of probably the most popular short story. I've written about, I don't know, not that many short stories, about 15 or so, but that one is consistently the most popular. People like that story. It's
the scene where she's in the wardrobe.
Horrific story.
The scene where she's in the wardrobe sniffing the bloke's shoes. I'm like, oh God, no. It was just one of those, that was a horror story, let's be honest. I know it's not traditionally your background. It's something actually I want to talk about, because you come from a completely different background. You come from journalism. Your interest is true crime, true stories. All sorts of things. How does that come about? Does a story appear in your head that you want to tell, or do you purposely go, like, if you want to write a horror story, do you purposely go out to write one, or is that just the way it turns out?
Yeah, it's sort of the way it turns out. I don't know why. It was sort of based, that particular story was based on where I lived at that time, which was I was working for a newspaper in Trenton, New Jersey, and I lived they'd converted a row house into two, a flat on the top and flat on the bottom, and then someone moved in on the bottom. So I wrote the creepy neighbor upstairs, getting obsessed with the neighbor downstairs. But yeah, so it's. And it does feed into, a lot of the journalism things do feed into what I write in fiction. The one good example is the one behind me, Skin of Tattoos, that came out of writing a lot about gangs and interviewing gang members in El Salvador, where I went on a magazine assignment. And later, when I came to LA, I was covering a lot of gang issues for the Associated Press. So that just came out of that, just out of an interest in that.
How did you find that sort of culture? I sort of touched. I did live in the United States for a while. I've been back and forth over years. I've only seen a part of it, and like the talk of "I'm the biggest gangster" sort of thing makes me go, "Whoa, what are you doing?" Or you see people on TV and they're trying to be all this and that. And is that really such a pervasive culture? Is it? But the media loves to blow things up and over dramatize. Is it really to that extreme with the gangs? Is there any way out of it, or are people like stepping away from it now?
Well, it's not really. I mean, once you're in it, you're sort of trapped in it to some extent. I mean, you age out of it. It attracts very young teenagers, really, that sort of have no hope. It's born of people who don't have much to hope for in their lives, and it's pretty concentrated in poor neighborhoods. I mean, really, that's really the root cause of it is poverty, and kids who don't have much option in life, and of course, not all kids in those neighborhoods become gang members. Not at all. Most don't. But the ones that do, they're seeking that sense of belonging, family, probably come from a bad family situation, not much, cohesive family. And they see these older guys that are, the big guys on the neighborhood, in the block, selling drugs. They get the girls, they get the cars, they get money, they get respect, and that's really what it's all about, is this, they want respect. Which they don't. Being poor, if you're really poor, you don't get a lot of respect in society.
No, so that's especially over in America. We have the class system over here, which is really constrictive. If you don't come from a certain family, you have to be exceptional to break out of that. It's really bad in some areas. It's more concentrated in others. And that it's almost like your die have been cast before you even grow up. I came from a pretty rough neighborhood myself. Growing up at a bad time, so I know all about it. It was different, gangs come in different shapes and forms, not pleasant, but I'm lucky enough my parents made sure I kept out of that. So
yeah, and that's often the case. If you've got parents watching out for you, or someone, there's been studies that show that you have to have at least one person. If you have one solid support person in your life, you can move ahead. But if you lack that support, which parents, of these kids are often just not around or whatever, they fall into it. And then once you fall into it, it can be a difficult way out. You know, they say there's 3 ways out. You end up in prison, in the hospital, or in the grave. You know, those are really your 3 main exits. So it's a bit of it's a sad life. It really is a sad thing. And people really throw away their lives at a very young age, you know.
I suppose if they see it, there's no alternative, but maybe highlighting and bringing attention to it could be maybe a bit of the start, you know. I know there's a lot of people do talks and so on, and you know, show how they did get out of it in the end. If people see there is an option, then maybe there's a bit of hope.
Yeah, I mean, what my goal was with this story too is that when I was interviewing these guys and whatever, I mean, I just you know, under that skin of tattoos, which is, you know, makes them look scary, and that's why they like these, you know, scary looking tattoos, and they've got them all over their neck, sometimes on their face, and they're just kids, you know, that are pretty screwed up, and they just want a job. You know, I was in neighborhood of San Salvador, and I was, you know, the photographer who was Salvadoran took me there, and there was this guy, and he was sort of the head of these young kids, maybe 13, 14, and they had a rope across the main entrance to a shanty town. So whenever somebody came up, the car had to stop, and they would charge them a toll or a tax to go into the shanty town. They controlled the entrance way. So while they were doing that, I was talking to the shot caller, the leader, and then, you know, about his life and whatnot. And then he leans over, and he was 21. He leans over and he's like, "Senora, you know, can you get me a job?" You know, they think, you know, they see somebody from the foreigner that you have access to money, jobs. And it just sort of hit me. He's like, "I have a 6-month-old baby. My girlfriend just had a baby, and 6 months old. I just want a job." You know, and that just kind of hit me. That was really the thing that, you know, it's like anybody else. He wants to support his family, and he just wants that, you know, one thing is a job to support his family and live well. But he couldn't find that, so he's, you know, ordering around this group of young kids. You know,
it's kind of a replacement given purpose. Yeah, because as human beings, that's something
right.
we need. And don't worry, we will get on topic, because the whole point of the horror genre is that stability and sense of purpose is always being challenged. And I think that's what makes horror so intriguing. And real life can be as horrific as anything you make up. You know, actually watching devastation of humanity, you know, people without purpose and the self-destructive impulses that we all have, watching that play out in real life as its own horror story, especially if you can't
I mean, I think it's almost worse in a way, because it is real life. You know, in a horror story, if you have, you know, supernatural elements or what have you, you can say, oh, you know, it's not as serious. But when it is something serious, I don't know, it's more realistic, maybe more relatable to people's lives. So it is more of a horror, you know, real horror.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I want to discuss in these sort of segments is the nature of horror, because people still, and flip sake, the horror genre has been going for over 100 odd years. You know, cinema has been going from the 1920s. You know, with Nosferatu just turned 100 years old. You know, horror has been a staple from fairy tales, the folklore. It's always been that aspect, because horror's always been that warning, not to stray from the path. You know, keep yourself safe. You know, in the end, we think we're the apex predator, but we're not, because there's always something out there. And if the last 2 years have shown anything, that we're not, definitely there's always that one thing around the corner, and our nice little comfortable lives are just one incident away from being ripped apart. From your perspective, do you deliberately try to bring horrific elements into your stories, or is that just how it plays out? Because I know not everything's horror-centric when you write, but when you see that kind of thread or trope, do you expand upon it and decide to go down that road, or does the story just take place, and if it falls into that category, so be it, or if not, you know?
Yeah, it just comes up, and I follow it down, and sometimes I have to reel it back in a little bit, you know, if it's too dark or whatever. I think people have asked me, why do you write so dark? And I'm like, well, I think it's because I covered, you know, in journalism, you get to see a lot of things that people don't really get to see. They read about it, but they don't get to witness it firsthand. So I think it's just led me to write about sort of the darker side of human nature, and particularly crime, I guess, is the main thing. But so it just leads to, it just bubbles up in my writing, and that's so I sort of let it go.
Social media, particularly Facebook platform, has started banning horror groups, horror interest groups, from talking about true crime, about discussing it or anything, because they're saying it's glorifying the act. Even I tried it when as you know, I try to promote your books. Everybody that takes part in the show, that's kind of my way of saying thank you for helping us create contact. It's like a cyclical thing. So I have your books, and every so often put them out in the social media, and they actually get banned. There's quite a lot of authors. Like at this stage, we're hitting 60 episodes of that particular segment, of over 40 authors, some multiple contributors, but of over 30 published books in my list that I cycle through, and there's at least 30% of them Facebook just ban immediately, saying it's too much. No. Do you agree with that? Is that the right way to engage these topics? Are they actually protecting people, or are they doing a disservice with that sort of action?
Yeah, I'm not in favor of that. I mean, that to me is just censorship, limiting creative expression and whatnot. I mean, it's clearly we're in this major true crime huge wave of popularity, and it's just getting big with podcasts and the streaming streaming networks, Netflix and so on. There, I mean, that's some of their most popular stuff is this true crime thing. I mean, it is more popular than it's always been popular, but it's more popular than ever, I think. But I think it's people are interested in, most people don't have to confront those things. They're not, crime victims or committing crimes. But it's a natural interest in, why do those people do that, and why are they doing that? What are they doing? I mean, it's just something that's so far from most people's lives that they're interested in it. And in a way, I don't know if it serves the justice system particularly. It, as far as like fair trials and that kind of stuff. But I think it does serve to, tell people about human nature.
Well, obviously, if there's a trial going on, then obviously don't talk about it. Like, the media is getting more and more encroaching crossing that line, so to speak. I don't agree with that. Let the process be uninhibited. Then at least it's been fair, it's been carried out, and then there's some sort of peace or closure, whatever happens. But the minute it becomes trial by public opinion, you may as well forget it, and that's the road to chaos. There's a reason why we're a civilized society, and I think people have maybe been comfortable for too long. But is there maybe a sense of shame that people are still interested in the macabre? Is there almost like why people have hang-ups about sex? Is there maybe that same hang-up that they're looking into something that don't know if giving them a thrill is the right word. I know some people might get a thrill, but fascinates that side of them. Are they afraid to maybe look into it? Is that why the groups, there's always somebody complains, like they join a horror group and there'll always be somebody who will report an image or a post or something, and it's like, what we expecting to get into, and this is on a daily basis multiplied by 1,000. Do people look into this and get a sense of shame that they maybe get a thrill from it, or they're fascinated, or it provokes an emotional reaction that maybe isn't discussed?
Yeah, exactly. I think people maybe sometimes they have this natural aversion to it. Oh, why do you want to look at that, or what, But I don't know. I think confronting problems, and that's one thing in journalism. You confront things, you write about them, you go and witness them. And tell people about them. I think the more you confront problems of society, whether it's crime or any other issue in society, the more you discuss it, and it becomes more transparent, takes the stigma away from it, that kind of thing. I don't think it's I think burying things and not looking at them. I mean, talk about like child sex abuse, that kind of thing, pedophilia. Years ago, nobody would talk about that. It was just not. It was covered up, completely. And now we talk about it as a society. We've learned to open up, and it's, and I think that's good. It's good for victims, and I think it's good for offenders.
Yeah, it's a massive thing back here, especially the whole debate about the BBC in particular. They're releasing a documentary about Jimmy Savile. I don't know if you're.
Yes.
You are right. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Absolute detestable scumbag. I mean, if there's a face of evil, that was it. Actually enjoyed what they were doing, and no shame about it. And then what's worse, it's not just him, but the people that facilitated it. And even back home, I'm from Northern Ireland originally. I live in England at the moment, but we have a thing that's called the Historical Abuse Inquiry, and that's like decades of gnarly stuff going on with care homes, churches, and I've worked in social services. I've seen some of it. I've seen some of it, like one in particular. I'm probably still in there, so I'm not giving any details, but I've seen boxes upon boxes of files, and each one is an account of something horrible and photographs, and what I mean.
Yeah.
That's actually quite a sore subject at the moment, because it's on the basis of why is this organisation still got a royal charter, and the whole fabric of why we got these institutions still protecting this organisation who stood by and have done so much, and then other institutions as well have just let it happen and covered it up. I can understand trying to save face or people being afraid, but when stuff like that happens, you just right, I'm out. But there's still some of the same people that have been part of that in powerful positions, and it's just like, come on, what?
It's incredible. So I mean, and it's the same with the Me Too movement, and the reckoning our society has now with sexual harassment in workplaces and things like that. I mean, I think we should talk about it as a society. We need to talk about this stuff.
I know. I think maybe because I've worked, I've had more women bosses than men bosses. I've worked in mixed environments. So it's like even when I was in the army, we've had girls come and stay in our billets because girls were doing stuff with each other, having parties, and they didn't want to be part of that, so they came and slept with us. We just put up a couple of towels. That's that happened all the time. Nobody gave it to us. I have not personally. The extent maybe they try, and this is where maybe it's disingenuous, the extent they try to say that goes on, I say the incidents, hammer that person or people involved, absolutely annihilate them, fine, but trying to paint everybody with the same brush kind of diminishes the actual wrongness. And once again, I think it's us not ready to confront like horror, not being ready to look into the darkness, the actual darkness, and then just paint it with broad strokes, and it's almost like it's making it more palatable if you just spread it to everybody. Does that make sense? It's actually, I think, having the opposite effect of where we went through in the 80s and into the 90s. There were trailblazers there, and now it's like we're going backwards, and things are now being covered up because of fear and because of finger pointing. It's like the mobs run the round, and it's having the opposite effect, and I think that's more dangerous. And it's going to lead to more darkness than what is actually happening. Take the incidents, nail that person to the wall, absolutely. But I don't know. I think there's something that's went wrong with the openness and talking. I don't know where it switched over to basically hand the mob the burning torches. And that's where you never get anything done.
Yeah, and I think when it comes to horror fiction, I think it's also can be cathartic to. Get out, where it's not a real monster or something. I think that also plays a role in society. To be sort of cathartic for people to read about things that are dark in life, but not necessarily real life.
They've started to blur the lines though lately, and that's maybe where people they don't quite know where to look. Like, look at the major franchises. Texas Chainsaw Massacre just had another remake. Halloween came out with another one. But the villains, they can't decide whether they're human that do bad things or supernatural entities. Is that, when you blur those lines and you can't actually decide what the monster in front of you is, there's this old saying, before you can slay the beast, you must name it.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Is there a fear of now, okay, this is a terrible person that did terrible things, this is a serial killer. No, let's start making it into a supernatural entity because that takes the sting off, so to speak. Is that
Mm-hmm.
where society's going, like trying to bury stuff?
Yeah, I think it's, I mean, that goes back to, Mary Shelley and Frankenstein, building the monster out of the man type of thing. But I think that, again, it just it reflects man's dark side. There's this dark side of of human nature. We do bad shit.
Yeah.
And I think that, yeah, that making the man monster thing is combining those two things, that side of human nature.
But with these franchises, it
It's
started out as
over.
human, and that was actually the terrifying thing, that these are humans capable of this. What I'm trying to
Mhm.
ask is, by now they're starting to blur the lines with the same character and make them supernatural. Is that diminishing what they were capable of as a human? I mean, they're almost giving them supernatural strength now. They lift people with
Yeah,
one
yeah.
hand,
Well,
and they can't
exactly.
be
Yes,
killed.
exactly.
Instead of being somebody very clever who can hide and you don't see them coming because they don't panic. Michael Myers, will use him as an example because that's. I think there's another film coming out soon, isn't there? It's supposed to be the last in the series, but
Hmm.
they started to talk about that last movie with him, Halloween Kills, that he was becoming more of a monster, that he was becoming supernatural, and to me that took away from the horror of the human that
Yeah,
committed the
yeah.
acts, because in the
Yes.
first movies, Michael Myers was a human, he was psychologically disturbed, and he carried out his acts as a human being, so therefore he had the same weaknesses as a human, he could be killed. And that the fact that he was able to get away with and do so much as a human character made him terrifying. I think now that they're diluting him by trying to make him
Yeah,
supernatural.
I think you're right. Yeah, I think you actually have a good point. Yeah, I think they are making it a little more palatable, as you say. Yeah, it is kind of diluting that, you know, horror tradition and making it more in the, I don't know, fantasy. It's almost becoming more fantastical than it
And when
has
something
been.
becomes fantastical, then that will never happen in real life, even though it's happened
Right.
hundreds of times. It is happening right now. There's probably something, like as we speak right now, something gnarly's going on. You know what I mean? That's just statistics. And when you've got 8 billion people on the planet, you know what I mean? There's going to be something good, something bad.
Oh yeah, yeah. We'll find out about it. 5, 10 years ago. On
Yeah, as we were
Netflix.
talking, something.
They'll do a show on it. But yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, I think they're blurring. Well, I think fantasy has also become such a big genre too that maybe that has an influence. I don't know. So they're making it a little more of a fantasy element to it. But yeah, I mean, the scariest things is that sort of combination man monster, because it could easily, you have a normal looking person that could just switch on something and something,
Yeah, and you have
dark
no
and
chance, you know what I mean? And that's
right.
that's the whole point of horror. It's to make you unnerved. It's to make you not feel safe. You're not top of the food chain anymore. You, whatever, it doesn't matter how comfortable your life is, that could be stripped away in a second just by one random event. In fact, your story, the one we were talking about, My Mother's Knives, that was just somebody moving into the flat,
Right.
and your
Right.
character
Just a
just
regular
the
event.
character just
and
happened to look out the window at that time. That was it. That person became under their radar. There was no way you could have prevented that. There was not. It was just a series of circumstances led to like horrific results, and that's real life. And that's
Yeah, that
that's
is
what I love
real
about
life,
horror, because that's what's terrifying. You just don't know.
Yeah, you just don't know. And it's funny, whenever there's a serial killer or whatever, the reporters go out and say, to the neighbors, did you see Joe Smith? Well, he was quiet and kept to himself. I mean, he was just a regular. They always say the same thing. He was quiet, kept to himself.
I'm
And
quiet
that's
and
the
keep to
whole
myself
thing,
because I
that
don't
he was
like people.
quiet. Yeah, I mean, he was quiet and kept to himself and looked like just some Joe Blow. And then, he's got body parts in his freezer.
Obviously, the
It's pretty-
mainstream, I mean, the mainstream sort of creative teams as such. I think, I don't know whether it's the nepotism that's become involved, that it's you have to know somebody to be in that. And you live in California, don't you? So you're probably closer to that bubble, or could probably see parts of it. If you're not part of that gang, you don't get to make
Yeah,
anything. Do we, as independent creators, have a duty to remind, especially in this genre, because it is a niche genre, and there's a possibility could be lost, do we have a duty to try and bring that uncomfortable, is that even a word, flip, uncomfortable feeling back to the public? Do you see that as a duty as an independent creator, or is just let me do my thing, and if people like it, so be it?
Yeah, I think I think people have to do what they're, create what they want to create. I mean, and that's the problem with, the whole content creation business, is sometimes you can create the right thing at the right time and you'll have a hit. Other times you'll create, say you create you made a fantastical monster 30 years ago and it wasn't in, but now maybe the same guy is, your same character is going to be in. So it's always, there's no, it's very much a taste thing. And if you hit it, you're great, but if you don't, then you feel like, oh, I'm not doing anything. So, but I always feel it has to come from a place within you. If you want to create that type of thing, great, or if not, but I do think when you try to follow trends and jump on the trend bandwagon, it's not as authentic a work as something else might be.
No, I'm the antithesis of trendy. I put my hands up. You know what I mean? I think trendy, I'm going the other direction. I'm like, not interested. That's why it's taken me years to catch up in movies, because when something's cool, I don't want to know. I'll step back and I'll wait a couple of years, and if it's still good, I'll enjoy it. Same with books, any medium, or that. You know what I mean? That's my own personal thing. But what would you say to, because it's so easy to get disheartened if you're an independent creator, or you're trying to, I suppose it depends on your motivations first of all, but if you have that need to create something, what would you say to somebody who's trying to navigate like this world today, like with more opportunities than ever to actually create and put something out there in the world, but there's also the nut is tightening, so to speak. I mean, there's less opportunities to actually get visual recognition of what you do. What would you say to somebody who's trying to create, or maybe hasn't done anything yet and wants to?
Yeah, you just have to follow your heart and hope it hits. I think when you try and first of all, there's a market for everything, even though there's, and again, maybe there's a horror purist niche that that you can make your mark in, and then if that's your thing, you have to do it. And I keep hoping for myself that hopefully something that I'm doing will find a mass audience. But if you're not a mass audience kind of a person, it's oh well.
Yeah, like yourself, I've put stuff out there too. And part of the horror for me would be to become part of that machine. I wouldn't be comfortable. Yeah. I know I wouldn't be comfortable. Like shiny lights and always people, like couldn't walk up the street without people stopping me. That's not who I am as a person. But at the same time, if you put effort into something, if you actually bring it from inside and you create something, there is that need to have it recognized as well. That's human nature. You create, you want to have purpose, and I think it's all back to having meaning in life. Like you said, you've interviewed people that don't have meaning in life, and you see the paths they go down. So and horror's a really interesting media, don't you think? That this can actually, for such a dark place, there's more chance to explore yourself, look at that side of things, and actually be a more developed person. Do you think people need to understand that more?
I don't know. That's a good question. Yeah, I think it is a good way to, again, explore human nature, explore yourself, would I be capable of doing this, or in a certain situation, that kind of thing. But again, I think you have to just do what's good for you, and I just hope what's good for, what I do maybe, can become a hit one day. Be nice. But, I read, I just finished a thriller by Lucy Foley, huge best-selling author, British author, and I don't, I'm thinking to myself, well, I guess I could write like this, and it's got kind of a horror, thriller thing, but I just don't write like that. I just don't. That's just not the stories I want to tell. Yeah. So you just have to kind of, go with what you want to write and hope it hits.
So can your inspiration be completely different? I know for my favourite authors are Terry Pratchett and Raymond E. Feist. They're fantasy authors. Completely not what I do. Terry Pratchett, amazing sense of humour, real insight into life, but I would never dream in a million years to write like him. But it's people like him that make me want to tell stories or want to get involved with creativity. But I'll never be a carbon copy of Terry Pratchett or Raymond E. Feist, in a million years. And what I do is like completely the other side of that anyway. Do you find yourself being the same? Do you have inspiration, people that you have looked to in the past who have inspired you to write, but you're completely nothing like them, or even in that genre?
Yeah, I mean, I actually really love literary fiction, and I mean, years ago I would have loved to be a literary author. Now I find myself, I don't really write I don't know if I can write, or even if I want to write, sort of very navel gazing type of stories and prose. I like putting in the crime, or the dark element, or the thriller, the horror element, and I wouldn't have predicted that, but it's somehow come out in me. But yeah, I still love to read those books, and they do inspire me to write, and they do inspire the way I write, more of a literary style, with metaphors and all these flourishes and things. I like that, but I don't think I could write a real literary novel. And I admire people who can, and they do inspire me.
Yeah, but that doesn't take away from the fact that you create, you've been successful, you have your own voice. So the fact that you're not copying what you read or what inspires you, does that give you more hope, or more of a grounded feeling that what you do is authentic? Then you know that you have found your voice, and when you're exploring your creativity, it's yourself that you're expanding and not just copying somebody else.
Yeah, it does. I mean, and I have to remind myself, as you just mentioned, it can be really discouraging and disheartening when, you put something out there, you've really worked on it, and it's good, and it just kind of like, falls, dies a silent death. Because it is very difficult to get traction in today's market. I mean, it is a great time to be a creator, but it also means there's more competition than ever, and often with not a lot of good stuff. It's just so saturated because everybody can do it. It's both good and bad. The gates are open. So I just, but yeah, I just think that you've got to push yourself forward and do what you want to do in your heart, and hopefully you'll find an audience.
Well, the thing about creation as well, it doesn't disappear. I think, and I've seen that talking, people expect if they don't get like a bestseller within 2 weeks of the book being released, that's it, it's done, finished. But that is there, it's in the space, and as long as the platforms exist where people can buy it, as long as it ends up, the best thing's obviously somebody to buy it and it ends up in a second-hand bookstore, although bookstores are becoming, sadly, I think in the past, they're becoming more of a niche sort of special interest bricks and mortar bookstore, which is an absolute shame, because that and the library when I was growing up were my places to be. Nothing beats walking down and picking up something you've never seen before. But the point is, the fact you've created something, it stays there. It's not going unless all the platforms just wipe out and you've no ways. But if somebody's bought your book, there it is, it's out. There's a chance it'll find up somewhere.
And that's a great thing about fiction, is it never goes out of style, really. I mean, that the hit TV series The Handmaid's Tale, I don't know if you've watched that. It's from a book by Margaret Atwood.
Yeah,
that was released in the 80s. And now just, it's taken 35 years for it to become, a big thing. Somebody just came upon it and made the TV show, and that's a big hit. So I mean, it's out there, yeah, exactly.
The thing that bugged me about that series, I think I watched the first 2 seasons. How many times did she get to the border, just about to escape, and then back again? And you're like, come on, you do that maybe once, and then that's it. She's living out her life. Because I haven't read the book, but I've read the synopsis. This was a lecture, if I remember rightly, about the story. The story takes place that a lecture's being given about the Handmaid's Tale's dairy, and it was her experience of life. So that was kind of the premise of the book. So she was just basically giving her experience as one. But the TV series, of course, TV's TV, but that's why I avoid most shows. But of course, it got very trite. And she's always escaping like every other episode and just getting to the border and just about to go and then getting dragged back. And you're like, come on, you're actually, if you told the story as it is, the likes of me who don't have a personal investment in it, but I like a good story, that's how you bring me in. You know, tell a good story, have me intrigued. But when you start doing that, the same tropes again, and horror is just as bad when you start doing the same tropes and it doesn't, you can almost predict the story as it goes along and you're like snoring. Then I'm not engaged. So if you're trying to deliver a message or you're trying to tell something, you've lost me.
Yeah. As an author, you have to watch that because you fall into doing the same things over. You have your characters doing the same things over and over again. You have to like vary the setting or vary something, as you go along in your story. Because I've caught myself doing that as you know. But I agree. Yeah, I mean it's to create suspense and everything. But change it up. You have to.
Yeah, that's what really. It just lost me. I don't know how many series. Was there 3 or 4 of those series?
It must be 4 or 5. I forget now.
See, there you go. There's a problem as well. Because of the machine, and that's why I'm a proponent of independent creativity, because these big corporations, they've everything tied up. Now people are stepping more and more away. This YouTube and these other platforms are more. People would rather watch us have a chat about anything than some studio produced, like really polished whatever. People have moved away from that. There's still the mainstream audience who I think more older people that haven't really embraced the internet, but more and more people are just like, nah, I don't want that. This is what we want. It's just people having a chat and being sincere and honest, and sometimes making mistakes, and not everything's going to be quoted pitch perfectly, but there's an honesty behind it. I don't think there's an honesty behind those stories in the way they're being told now.
Well, I know, and what gets me also about TV is the dialogue is always, the characters always think they're always spot on with their dialogue, and they always think of things, the comeback is always there, and I'm always like, it's just so unrealistic, and I know, I mean, it's a different world writing for TV and TV, the TV dialogue, the characters are always,
You could never pay me enough to get in that world. I'm sorry. I'm low maintenance type person, so I don't need spangly stuff. As long as I get my little nerdy indulgences, I'm good. So I don't need mansions and jets and helicopters and chauffeur-driven limos. I don't need to be on the red carpet. So you're never going to entice me back. But I could not. That would actually hurt me emotionally to have to write that drivel.
Oh, I know. It's pretty flat, I think, most of it.
So, actually, you're a published author. So, do you find there is that struggle then with the publishing house and your vision? Or you find that more difficult as years went by, that because things are becoming this kind of way, that everything's kind of generic and bland, and people don't want to be challenged? Have you found any difference in you trying to get published? Or has everything remained the same?
Yeah, I do think. I think that's why the big publishers, which the publishing world, like many industries, is getting smaller. Because they keep the companies themselves keep buying each other, and so they become these huge conglomerates. So it's fewer outlets for your work in a traditional sense. But they want the stuff that's going to appeal to the most people. They don't want, a really, niche thing that might be really terrific literary thing or what have you, or they don't want to try a new thing. They want, the same but different. That's what I always hear. We want the same but different. So it means like, the same sort of stuff, but, just make a different setting, I guess, But they're looking for that stuff that's going to appeal to the masses, and of course, not everything one does is going to do that. I don't think anything I have done is to appeal to a mass audience, which is why it's great to have independent publishers and or even self-publishing. You can do your own thing and find your own audience, but it's difficult because you have to build that audience. And of course, with the big publishers, you get a big advance. You get marketing help or just the prestige, I guess, too, of having a bigger name behind your work. But when I look at what some of the big publishers, publish, that it's not very good stuff, I mean, it just isn't.
Yeah, a couple of weeks ago, I actually talked about this last week as well. I got into a fight with some random individual on Facebook, just
Yeah.
sharing. Uh, every month, I like to thank everybody that's taken part that month, and I put out a short video and just say thanks very much. And somebody ripped into me, going, "How dare you promote independent authors? They can't write, they can't think, they can't speak. What are you doing, you horror?" You know, it was just really horrendous. I'm like, whoa, such anger came out of nowhere. I'm still perplexed. It's been 2 weeks since it happened. I'm still like scratching my head going, where does this... I can understand not liking something. I can understand maybe thinking something isn't high quality, but I didn't understand the anger and the vitriol of, how dare you independently publish or promote others that do the same. I was like, what? Absolutely. Have you ever encountered that? Have you ever encountered anybody like proper have a go at you for like doing your own thing?
No, I've never. Luckily, I have not had that experience. But I think, you know, when the first self-publishing first came out, things were, you know, people didn't know how to do a nice cover. The books weren't edited. I think now it's become much more accepted, and I think the standard has gone up with independent publishing quite a bit. And I've heard that elsewhere too. So and there are success stories with independent publishing, you know. But again, for the number of books that are independently published, not, you know, it's not very many, but you can. But I think the bar has gone up, and I think, you know, it's a mistake now to discount independent publishing.
Yeah.
Whereas it was probably at first. I think it's a mistake now because.
But is that not the same
Yeah.
with any new technology or in a free market, any new enterprise? It's always, you know what I mean, everything takes a moment to build itself up. And the same as independent thought and free thought, you know, and especially the freedom to explore not just light topics but dark topics, and like to push the envelope to see where you can actually delve yourself, you know. Is that not how we all progress as a people? And those that gatekeep and put others down, is it out of fear themselves? Like, what is it they've got to lose? Like, I don't know if this person was an author or not, but what has that person got to lose from more being out there in the market? Because if there's more out there that's of a lower standard, then obviously your star's going to shine brighter. That's
Yeah,
my
exactly.
personal...
And I think people, yeah, and I think people who put down, and especially getting so worked up, or, you know, about other things, they're boosting themselves because they're putting someone else down. I really think it's about them and their low. You know, somehow they're getting, oh, well, I know better because I know what good writing is or good grammar is and whatnot. So I can criticize this. And, I just think it's about making oneself feel superior by putting others down.
Yeah, I think that's a bit of a sad existence, you know.
Absolutely.
I can never understand that mentality, because I've always been an enabler, motivator, you know, always trying to push other people's forward. It's kind of been part of my career as well, teaching others, putting them forward, getting them through things, solving problems. So I don't understand that mentality. It is completely alien to me. And I've been lucky enough, especially with this particular podcast, I've had 99% positive interactions, and it's been fantastic. And people like yourself, wonderful to have you on board and taking part. You know what I mean? It's what makes it worthwhile for me. I just don't get that mentality and how it's justified, if that makes sense.
No, I don't know. As I said, I think these are people who somehow have to make themselves feel superior by putting other people down. That's really what it's about. And it's, yeah, I mean, it's really an ugly sort of thing. And when you look at someone and you think, you know, what a small person you are, you know? I mean, it just makes themselves look bad, look very small.
Yeah,
petty.
One of my stories was actually about a health inspector, and he was one of those type of people. So I just had fun doing gnarly things to him. You know, it was great. He ended up in an urn at the end of it. You know, that was the end of him. But yeah, but if you don't explore that as well, you know, if you don't have that outlet to think, oh, I hate that type of person, I'm gonna imagine doing really bad, dark things to them. Because at least if you're imagining it there, it's on paper. You're not sitting holding it in and then you're going to explode. It's always the nice people. Have you noticed they're the ones that always snap? The ones with that fake smile and always, you know, blessed be or amen, whatever it is. They've always got that sort of nice. Everyone has to be nice and nice. They're always the ones that break and become the serial killers, or become, you know, the the horrible ones. You know, there's definitely something to be said about not being afraid of like looking into the sort of dark aspect, or even exercising it. You know, as a mental exercise, just get it out there.
Yeah, I mean, that's the great thing about writing is you can really get a lot out on the page. With characters' names and like in the book I'm working on now, a mystery. I put in there the name of this woman who kind of slighted me, so she's called Shelley now. She's the sort of nasty little person, and I gave her the name Shelley.
And that takes away their power over you as well. You know what I mean? Somebody.
Right, exactly, and it's just like a little.
Yeah.
And so that's a great thing about being a writer. You can get your revenge back in a
absolutely
concrete way, but not a harmful way.
I've actually had some questions. I just want to make sure I've actually asked them, because this is actually much better. Just a great conversation. But
yeah, you asked really good questions. I have to say, very
it's just the conversation. That's what I'm about.
Meaty questions.
Oh, well, that's good. It's about being worth. You know what I mean? I want this to be a worthwhile endeavor, and anyone else that comes on as well, they know what they're going to get. It's just about having a chat and exploring ideas, because I think that's as important to go. Okay, what have you got to sell this week? Okay, what have you written? Give me your qualifications. It's like, what's that about? That's not letting people know you and what motivates you. And then when people know what motivates you and where you're coming from, then they can appreciate your work in a different, a new light, and pick up one of your
absolutely.
stories.
I found, actually, when you strike up a conversation with someone, and then somewhere along the line, I mention I write books or something, and the next thing you know, oh, what do you write? And they're looking it up, and you made a sale without even really purposefully doing that. But if they like you, they'll buy your book. That's what.
Yeah, over here, people are a bit more reserved. And when you tell them, oh, I like horror stuff, or I have a really dark sense of humor, I have to really check my sense of humor, because I have real gallows sort of, I'll see a situation, I'll make a joke out of it, and it's got me into trouble so many times. And you just see the faces of, oh, you did not just say that. I'm like, yeah, and that's what I'm not trying to say. When the thing I'm holding back, that's what came out, but what's back here I'm trying to hold. If you saw that coming out, you'd have real problems. Have you found people embrace what you're doing? Like you said, have you had anybody like go, why would you write it? You kind of alluded to it, but have you had anybody like actually freak out in front of you, or say, oh, what do you think you are? You're glorifying this? Or have you had anybody try to admonish you in public or in person?
No, I haven't had that. I have had people say, oh, this was too violent for me, or this wasn't, I just couldn't continue reading this. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. And, not everything is for everyone, and and of course I've had some negative reviews and whatnot. And, you learn to just sort of shrug, and not every book is for everyone. As I say, you read these massive bestsellers, and I'm not, I kind of, why is that a massive bestseller? Why did they get this big publishing contract?
Yeah.
But, it's a subjective business. So, some people have said, it's just too much for me. I couldn't read it. And I'm like, oh, okay, fine. Sorry.
I always look at, my example is the airport bookstore. Anytime you go through an airport, you'll not find horror. It's just an exercise in blandness. I mean, you're looking for a quick read to pick up on the flight, and it's just generic. You'll never. I don't think you'll ever have your mind blown in the likes of one of those places, or the supermarket. When they have books along the supermarket, right. You're not going to find that treasure there, I don't think. And that's what we're trying not to be. How important is it? Like I said, that your work isn't for everybody. How important is it as a creator to understand that fact that what you put out there isn't always going to be met with a positive response, and people are actually going to test what you do? How important is it to be ready for that?
Yeah, I think you have to learn it. I think everybody starts out that, oh, my book is really good and it's going to be, it's going to sell, or, it's going to get great reviews, or somebody's going to discover it, or something. And then you see that it's, most of the time that does not happen. And it is a disappointment. I went through that myself, and now I just have to really you lower your expectations. It's a very tough business right now because it's just very saturated. So you just have to know, and you have to keep writing and build a following. So that's what I try. I'm now in this stage where, okay, I have to keep writing and build a following with a newsletter, doing podcasts or what have you, and try and just build a fan base around that, which I didn't really realize I had to do either, at the beginning of this.
Yeah, I'm terrible at self-promotion. I'm just...
Yeah, I know this, I don't,
Yeah, just that whole look at me.
Learn, you just have to, you get used to it, and it's part of the deal these days, It's part of the deal. But yeah, you do have to realize that. But I think nobody really prepares you for it, because you all want to, everybody wants to think that their book is going to do it, or something.
Yeah, I don't know. I just, I do for me, just whatever happens, happens. It'd be nice, don't get me wrong, I'd be lying if I said it wouldn't be nice to hit that mark and get that recognition and see some success, especially personal success from it. But if you stick to you, know what I mean, I think that's the important thing. Sticking and doing it.
Yeah, I think that's the only thing that's within your power. The rest of it is really beyond your control. So you can't control it anyway. So just focus on what you can control, which is what you write and what you put out and send out your newsletter or what have you. But it is, I think you just have to learn how to deal with it.
So, sorry, just off the top of my head here, what trick or what thing did you learn as an independent creator? What tip would you give someone else that you discovered, okay, I did this and all of a sudden things got easier, or I saw some forward motion where I felt stuck? What bit of advice or what technique would you give to somebody who wants to start creating, or maybe have started creating and they feel like they're not getting anywhere?
I just keep going. I think you just have to really persevere, and it just takes a lot of persistence and perseverance to you just keep going, keep writing, and I've written a lot of different things too, and I don't know if that was good or bad. Maybe I should have just stuck to one particular genre or one particular subgenre, one particular niche and plowed through on it. Or maybe I should have just done that, and just that's how you build that following. I don't know.
Yeah, but
I think it's really about success. Is really about persistence.
Just keep cracking at it.
Keep going. Yeah, and you just have to put on kind of a tunnel vision. You put on your blinders and keep going, and not letting people knock you down.
But
it's very easy for that to happen.
Yeah. If you just stayed to the one genre, would your writing have improved, or by exploring other ideas and going down other paths? If you'd cut yourself off from that, would you be where you are now and see any progression, or do you think that might have held you back? You might have you might have got a bit of a following, yes, but long term, would that have helped you or hindered you?
I think it did help my writing, actually, because then you learn more about how, say, teenagers. I wrote a YA novel, which is, again, it's got a dark side to it.
Oh, right, yeah, I've seen that.
Dark romance, Girl on the Brink. So that, I had to learn about how teenagers interacted and spoke and dialogue and stuff like that. And Skin of Tattoos, it was more plot. I had to learn more about driving the plot and things. So I think it all goes into the mix. And I write things like, short stories and essays. And again, I think it helps your writing the more different things you do, to be honest. I don't know whether it helps your career as an author. You probably just have to stick to one particular thing.
But you maybe get to the point, is it good to maybe try as much as possible at the start, and then find the thing that you're successful at, and then concentrate on it?
Yeah, I think that's a good, again, that's why I sort of went with the crime, mystery, thriller thing, because that seemed to be the thing that I was gravitating to naturally, is that sort of dark fiction.
Excellent. Like, it's a very popular genre, and
yeah, it is, and it is a popular genre, and yeah, and I have to stick to I write in a sort of a literary style, so that's just how I write. I can't really change that. So that's, yeah. So I'm just kind of developing that.
yep, cool. We've just gone over the hour, so we'll just wrap up. So you said you're currently working on a project at the moment. What have you got planned coming out in the future?
Yeah, I just finished a mystery novel, so I'm revising it now, and it's about a podcast, actually, a true crime podcast. So one plot is the podcast that's investigating a cold case murder of a teen girl, and the other one is another young woman. She's about 25, and something happened to her 10 years before, and she's lost she can't remember it. And this has held her back her whole life. So the podcast actually triggers her to investigate what happened to her that night. So the both plot lines sort of weave in and out, and at the end they merge. It will be
oh, excellent.
She and the podcast reporter sort of merge, and as they discover similar things.
When can people expect to see that, do you reckon?
I don't know. I'm revising it now. I'm trying to get a publishing deal on it, so I'm going to send it out. So it may be quite a while. Who knows?
Well, watch this space. Christina, thank you very much for coming on the show. This has been fascinating. Like, shared the notes with you earlier on. We had questions, but hey, stuff that's not the way I want to do this. It's just let's have a chat, see where it goes, and we've turned up some really interesting topics. Been brilliant. Hopefully maybe get you on again at some stage, and definitely when your next book comes out, of course we can talk about it.
Thanks so much, Colin, for having me on. It's been great. As I said, I've enjoyed. This has been a different sort of an interview too, so it's been a good chat. Yeah,
that's fantastic. So folks, check out Christina and her works. They're in the show note descriptions, and until next time, keep it creepy, keep it horrific.